It is nice that we're certainly at a time where it's easier than ever to get into the hobby.
And sometimes it takes years.
I think as a percentage, though, probably very few people make it that far. Now that Dingus Day is over,
Yeah.
and I don't know how many people know what Dingus Day
Popular
is, but
holiday.
it's very popular here in Buffalo. Well, it's Polish, right? It's the Polish community. So
Yeah, but
it's a big party. Basically.
it's kind of like one of those days where everybody's Polish.
People get on buses and go bar hopping, and it's a big party on
It's
the
just an
Monday after
excuse to
Easter every year.
Go party.
I guess so. But hey, it is what it is. But yeah, I guess Buffalo, New York, is one of the most popular places for it. And I suppose there's other parts of the country that have a good ethnic Polish grouping that wants to party like that. But anyway, I guess we're supposed to talk about something that audiophiles always run into. Well, actually, anyone that gets into audio, or I think any hobby, where you start going further, like beyond the first purchase, right?
Yeah.
Like we always use cameras as a parallel, cars, you name it. There's everything, modifying cars. There's hobbies there's a hobby, whatever other hobby. But you usually a hobby, you get into, you start somewhere. You got to start say, okay, well, I'm going to get something. Let's say a headphone. So you get the headphone, but you never had let's say you never had a headphone above $20, right? You always got you're still running the one that JetBlue gave you 10 years ago, right? The on-ear.
Oh, I think you gotta pay for those now. I think.
Oh, do you?
Yeah, I think so.
What are they, $5?
Something like that. Yeah.
So let's say you've just been running one of those that you stole from the plane a while back, right? And you never really.
They
so
were
now,
free though. At one point.
Yeah. Well, they used to be.
Yeah.
So like now, right? You get you spend $100 on headphones. Like, wow, that's like never spent $100 on a headphone before. Never spent anything on a headphone before, right? So now all of a sudden that gets you going to realize, okay, well, now that I got this headphone, how's it sound, and do I need something else? Then you look into it, go, well, people are running amplifiers, right? So you get a little USB adapter for hooking you up. That happens to have a headphone amplifier. So now, wow, that sounds better. So now you're on a path. You got two parts. You got a headphone, and you got a little USB dongle thingy that has some amplification. Now you're starting to realize that the world opens up around you for music.
Well, yeah.
Sort of.
It's a case of you didn't know what you didn't know. Now you know that there's this whole world.
Yeah.
So
Well, you get a taste of it.
yeah.
And to some people that are kind of predisposed to want to go down that rabbit hole, they end up pursuing it where they didn't think they would. And it's very common. You see it all the time. People buy low-cost things, and they say, I'm going to buy a nice headphone, and I'm going to be set. And inevitably, you buy this, what you think at the time is a nice headphone. You figure out, in fact, you are not set. And it makes you want to look more into it and buy more expensive gear and continue to improve your setup and refine it over time. And it's super common because we talked about this a bit, but it's kind of sort of the knowledge that does it. It shows you that there can be changes, there can be improvements that you didn't even know existed. And you spend a little time with this gear. You grow used to it, and you come to realize that what you thought was amazing could be better. You could improve it. You could buy this thing and it'll do this different thing in a different way that's more appealing or more exciting or whatever. And you kind of continue down this iterative path until you're at endgame. And that's unfortunately the reality with a lot of hobbies.
I think as a percentage, though, probably very few people make it that far. I mean, out of the people who buy these $100 headphones, it might be the couple percentile get it that far.
Right. Usually there's a limit, right?
Well, I mean, you're
so
satisfied
practical.
with what you get, and then you're like, just plateau just don't even look at anything else.
For years, even.
So you
people
don't even
just
know
go,
other things exist. Just don't even look.
Yeah.
And that's how you get off that whole,
But I think
carousel.
forums are kind of like the worst offender there in that regard. Maybe if you stay off the forums, you don't pay any attention to what's happening in the world, you just wear your headphones all day and you hide, you wouldn't notice. But you see this a lot with pretty much any hobby. You get excited about the hobby, and because you get this new thing and it's cool, it's fun, it's exciting. You start using it, you recognize, wow, this is so much better than what I had. And you get involved in the community, you go on forums, you start talking with other people, reading what other people are talking about, new things, different things, whatever. And you come to realize there's a whole bunch of things, and people are talking about the benefits and how it's whatever superior to the thing you already have.
It'd be a cool survey to do. Like, you know, you'd have to properly word the question for the survey, but it'd be like, how many people started out with like, a $50 headphone or whatever, I don't know, you'd have to word it, just curious, like a percentage. How many people who are now near end game, right? Where'd you start? Something like that. It'd be cool. Even like if people want to leave it in the comments, that'd be great too. Like, like what got you on the path? It'd be curious to know, like with everybody, like where everybody started.
And are you happy that you're there?
Yeah, right. In the end,
happy where you got to.
Yeah. Well, as most people say, their wallets aren't. But yeah.
I guess the trouble is though, would you have preferred to just skip right to the end game or to whatever your end game is? Because if you started out buying $20 headphones, then $200 headphones, and then $500 headphones, and $1,000 or $2,000 headphones, would you have preferred just jump right to your end game, your multi-$1,000 setup?
Some people do.
Because you don't get that experience then, right? And it's hard to know then really what the changes can be, what performance gains are left. When you just jump right to end game, it's kind of harder to appreciate it. Now, it doesn't mean it's worse, but it's sort of almost depends on the person, I guess. But it's almost less exciting to go right to end game for some people because you don't see the improvement path. But for others, they don't want to deal with it. They just want to go right to the final. Right?
Well,
they want to be told it's the best.
We're seeing that a bit more often now. Customers that just want to get
Jump
it done.
in.
Yeah, they just okay, what do I need type thing. But even those people tend to start off in a moderate setting, and then they go, "Oh, this isn't good enough. Can I do better?" And they rock through stuff, and within a month or a few months, they'll go through every freaking thing, and it's rare. It's not that it's rare, but for some reason, I like those people. Like they don't seem to believe you when you tell them, well, if you want the best, like for example, like with our 1266, we just say, well, just get the WA33 tube amp and call it a day. But it's $13,000, right? So they'll start with a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 amp and go, okay. Okay, I get it now, but now I want the better one again. They still got it in their head that we told them that you should really want to go there, and you know what I'm saying. And it's kind of it's cool, but it's such a that's the problem. You're transitioning so quickly. You said, you're not really appreciating the steps involved.
I think most people don't go that route. Most people go with they're like, all right, this is the best I can afford for now. They look into it, do some research, and then just like not looking at okay, good for 10 years. And then 10 years later, you look at like, oh man, things have changed. Now I have a little more money, maybe. And then you got to research it all over again and see what's available.
Well, with speakers and 2-channel, I think 10 years, even 20, I see people. But with headphones, it's more like 3 months.
Well, it can't be.
People are just upgrading way faster on the headphone.
It's a totally different cycle with headphones for some reason.
Yeah.
Well, and you could have multiple systems. Like you normally don't have multiple speaker systems. I mean, some people do, but
yeah.
So it's easier to have multiple headphones. So
you could have speakers in every room.
It's a little impractical.
Yeah, the curious thing is there's a few people that did videos on this now. If you take someone that's more or less predisposed to always want better, to want the improvement, and they know nothing about headphones or high-end audio currently, if you immerse them in it, if you actually give them time with different gear, you let them try different things, almost inevitably, they start off by saying, I don't see how you could justify spending hundreds or thousands of dollars on headphones and headphone gear. And yet, pretty much always universally, once they spend enough time with it to really appreciate it, they get it. They see, it's actually not that bad.
It's kind of
I understand it.
It's kind of like the first time I remember getting an L glass lens for the Canon setup we used to use here back in the day for stills. And you throw that L glass on it, it's like, and you see it instantly as photos. It's like, when you blow it up on your screen, it's like, wow, the clarity level is crazy on this lens. And I never really thought about needing a $2,500 or up one lens, which basically does the same job as a few $100 lens. You got a photo, it looks okay. But it's like, it's funny when you get to that point, you're like, okay, now I get it. And I think that's the same thing with audio, where all of a sudden the clarity jumps up to a level that you never thought would happen. You're figuring, this is good enough, right? And then all of a sudden you get a whiff of it or a listen to it.
Well, you do see that at shows, especially a lot. People that aren't used to like really high end gear, and they hear it and they're like, I can't imagine it being better than this. And it's like, oh well, it actually still can get better, you know.
Right.
But
yeah, especially in a show setting, because you're not in the ultimate environment. You're not home.
It's the same thing with pretty much any hobby. At least for me, in like photography, when you start to get into it, you figure, well, I'll get a budget DSLR or something like that, and that'll be pretty good, right? It'll beat my point and shoot or whatever, and it gives you the manual control and all that. You could change your lens, but inevitably, the knowledge that you gain from that initial experience with the DSLR that you spend a little time with, you come to recognize there's limitations, and you see these limitations more profoundly than you would otherwise when you're actually experiencing it. When you recognize, oh, it's not that good in this lighting situation or whatever. It's actually not as good as I expected in these particular situations. And it makes it kind of easier to justify the expense of the other stuff because you see the benefits.
Well, I know it's been like the biggest draw with like upgrading my iPhone is the camera set portion. Because, you know, I mean, not necessarily every year is phenomenal, but it seems like every other year, and like, you know, now we got 3 lenses on it, you know, 3 different sensors. It does depth better. It's doing all this processing that like a single sensor could never do, you know?
yeah, but that's the thing. Like you get so used to always using your phone for pictures. When you go back to a real camera, you're like, oh, this is a lot better. Still.
Yeah.
There's still no comparison.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard to beat the lenses. You just can't, you know, the plastic or whatever the lenses they use in there. But yeah, you're right. But it's so convenient, right?
It's convenient.
Like, it's funny how convenience trumps over that. But anyway, I don't want to go on a side topic with that. Yeah, we're supposed to be talking about
the audiophile's dilemma.
the dilemma.
Yes.
So what to do? Well, I say roll with it. That's what most people do. You just go with it. It's kind of like go at your own pace, you know, and obviously what you can afford. But expect it to happen, not to everybody, but to people.
Most people.
Yeah, you know, once it touches you and it grabs you, hey, roll with it.
Well, I think the biggest thing would be look at all the things available, you know, in your price bracket, and then just look at it for like weeks, months, you know. Don't just pull the trigger, you know. Make sure, you know, this is probably what you're looking for, you know.
That's actually not unreasonable because you do certainly see newcomers that hop right in and inevitably they're not happy with it or they wish they bought something differently. And of course, that's never the goal for anyone. Nobody really wants to sell you something you're not happy with. But the trouble is, how do you know? And spending a little bit more time with it might help increase the certainty, but it's never a solution. So I guess as long as you go into it understanding most likely you're going to want to improve and you're okay with that, well, start at something you think is pretty good, spend some time with it. You know, maybe it's not your end game, but that's fine.
I think that's a part of it. Is patience is a big part of it in any hobby. You know, it's not an instant thing. It's not like, you know, getting a steak and eating it, you know, and then you're done.
Right.
It doesn't work like that. You know, it just doesn't work like that. You need to give it the time to. What time does is a few things. Your brain gets accustomed to the new sound or whatever it is you're doing. You know, therefore your experience level comes up because now you're starting to understand the change you just made, whatever it might be, better. And it's not going to happen in an hour or a minute. And that's one of the things we see, the mistakes we see people making all the time is they'll judge things in the first 5 minutes. It's like, it doesn't work like that. This isn't like, is this green or blue? It's not a color choice. This is, you know, all shades of color in one change, and you need to decipher those changes. It's not that simple overnight.
A lot of times you could get broad strokes if you're very experienced very quickly, but to get the finesse, it takes a lot of time. And if you're not experienced, oftentimes it could be weeks, months, years to discover what the real nuance is. And this sounds to a lot of people like ridiculous. How could it take me a year to figure it out? But time and time again, it takes people that long.
But I've seen people too that for whatever reason, not necessarily do they have a ton of experience with listening, but they'll jump in, they'll go right to the top, and they'll love the shit out of it. They'll be like, oh man, this is really good. And you know, and I mean, they had it in them for whatever reason. They were ready for that, even though you wouldn't think they would be ready for it because they had no prior experience. So
I think that's a big portion of the issue, though, because how do you know which one you are?
You don't till you try it. Yeah.
So the question is, do you want to risk the disappointment to some extent by spending $20,000 or whatever on the best of the best and buying everything perfect right out of the gate? Or do you want that experience? And I guess that's a question for yourself to figure out.
Do you ever see how they teach these infants how to swim, which always blows my mind. I don't know
Just like throw them in a pool.
Yeah, throw them in a pool and see how they do
how
it.
it goes.
And man, they just go right to it. Some of them go right to it, and probably some of them are like blowing bubbles, you know. And it's like it's that kind of thing. I think it's that kind of feeling where you're either going to sink or swim right away, and then if you sink, then obviously you need more work. You got more work ahead of you, you know.
What I like to do is put stuff save for later on Amazon, you know, and just every once in a while you look at it in your cart, you know. It just sits there for like 2 years. Like I've had stuff like go like, you know, they don't even sell it anymore. It's been in there for so long.
Not that I'd recommend Amazon as a place to get
I'm just saying. I'm not saying for like, you know, amps and stuff. I'm just saying anything in general. But yeah, so then it's always like, is it time to get this yet? Move it to the cart.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes years. I've had stuff literally years in my save for later.
Well, and again, to say that this is a dilemma is actually a positive. It usually turns out to be quite a positive aspect in most people's lives when they do take it to the next level. And I see a lot of people over the years that never do that. They'll stay within their comfort zone of pricing, whatever that might be. Like you said, can't imagine spending over $1,500 on a headphone.
Yeah, but sometimes those people can get broken out of that by experiencing something that's
They have to. Yeah, and that's the suggestion, right? Is you have to go beyond to see if it's you or not. And if it ain't, then it ain't. You know, that's it. You know?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
And we've seen a handful of people now that were very passionate about saying there was never any reason to spend more than this certain amount on gear. You never need better than this. And you see this time and time again on forums. People say, this is perfect. It can't be any better. None of these things matter beyond this particular point. And they find some arbitrary point, $100, $500, $2,000, whatever it is, right? And they say nothing matters past it. And yet, time goes by, their opinions usually change. If they actually continue to gain experience, oftentimes these opinions slowly shift over time. And we've seen a handful of people that were so passionate about saying, you never need better than this. And now they're saying something radically different. So it's very curious how some people could have such strongly formed opinions. And yet, still, over time, with a little bit more experience, they've come to grow to figure out there's more.
Well, I think the beauty of it nowadays too is they have the choice in source material and music is like a given. Like you don't even have to think about it. It's just automatic. It's there.
Right.
You spend whatever subscription rate is a month, and bam, you have high-res music at your disposal. Any music you want. So wow, I mean, talk about an easy entry nowadays. I mean, before we had to buy our music. Remember, you bought a CD
And hope you liked it.
Yeah, right. So if you didn't have that collection, right? I mean, that is a huge detriment to learning about higher end audio gear. Is you don't have the source material to play on it. You know, it just you don't. Now you really don't know where to go. You don't have a beginning.
I remember it was like when we first got a first DVD player, and it was like, okay, we don't have any DVDs.
Yeah, right.
So it's like, this is useless.
And then depending on the TV you had, it's like, well, it's better, but you know, big deal. The terrestrial looks fine too, right off an antenna. So, you know,
it is nice that we're certainly at a time where it's easier than ever to get into the hobby. You have a lot of information available at your fingertips with the internet. The unfortunate reality is, since you have so much information, it can be hard to weed through.
Could be.
But if you spend a little bit of time, you could figure out for yourself what you're looking for, what you value. You know, sometimes people are going to be right, sometimes they're going to be wrong, but you read enough reviews, you can usually form a pretty good opinion, and the content is readily available.
Well, I mean, ever since the, Steve came out with the original portable iPod, yeah. I mean, that's where this all started. And, really, it was a savior for audio in general, 2-channel audio.
It was a pretty big kickstart, I would say.
At this point, it's finally coming to fruition, if you ask me, for all kinds of reasons. And it's great. It's great. It's great for people. It's great for their kids. It's great for the younger generation to be able to just, chill out, have something to go to. Because think about it. Let's reverse this back. What if that didn't happen? What if music didn't happen, right? And all we were people sitting behind keyboards and computer screens, which is basically where we were prior to this, right? We didn't have this entertainment value that this relaxation ability to just go anytime, anywhere, and tune out. What would people be like? It could be bad. Would we all be robotic in nature
Well,
at that point?
maybe,
You know?
but this only impacts a small portion of the population.
I don't know about
Most
that.
people aren't super into music like the audiophile community can be.
I don't know. I mean, how many earpods and all that stuff and stuff do Apple sell?
Well, it definitely
Hundreds of millions?
decreased the number of people talking in stores and stuff. People with their AirPods and just shop
A lot of
it
times in the
in
masses,
their own world.
yeah,
Yeah, really?
it's often kind of a negative side there too.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
People are walking around the streets with headphones on and not
Yeah.
paying attention to the world.
Yeah,
so.
but that lack of social skills, I think it was already coming anyway because everyone was just on a computer.
Oh
They
yeah,
weren't leaving
I don't
their
think the
house.
headphones did it.
Yeah, no.
You know, they were communicating with a keyboard.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in that sense, I don't know if it would have changed anything, but
Well,
who
just
knows?
when you're out in the wild, then you're
Yeah.
not communicating with anybody. At a keyboard, it's different. You know?
Well,
It's
when
definitely
I was
changed.
in Tokyo for one of the shows a few years ago, the Japanese seem to take that to an extreme. They keep to themselves. It's the way, and I don't know where that started or if it's always been like that. I didn't live in Japan. I obviously wasn't born and raised there, but at some point maybe they were always like that. But yeah, they're all like that, where they're individually keep to themselves. They have their music, and you go to a Starbucks and there's no groups. They're individuals, and I mean, I don't know. I don't know. That's bad too. So I mean, but anyway, bottom line is that I think that it's nice to have this rather easily accessible release for people to go to, that if it didn't exist, I'm not really sure where people would go for a release.
It's beneficial for society, I would say, overall.
Totally.
Yeah.
I always said, like, in these warring countries, they should just drop a bunch of freaking portable players with headphones, just scatter them. Let people listen to music, What are you fighting about? Just
I'm not sure it quite works that way.
yeah,
but
well, no, but you know
Okay.
what I'm saying? Okay, still,
it would be curious to
what are
see
you fighting about?
whether or not something like that would actually have a profound impact if you were in an area that was poor or for whatever reason didn't really have the availability that you see in developed nations, and you just distributed this tool free of charge and you made it so it was all accessible, easy to use, whatever. There weren't any issues with like cellular coverage or power, that sort of thing.
Right.
It'd be curious to see how that would impact the society.
Yeah, right.
That radical of a change overnight.
Right. Yeah, it would be interesting.
Yeah, because it was a slow change here. I
It
mean,
was
took
very
a-
slow here.
It took a while.
Oh, yeah.
Right. It was a generational change to some extent.
Well, I think that's what Elon's concept is with worldwide internet too. With the right with
Well, that's profound, right? Because
Yeah.
then you guarantee, even in the areas where nobody's ever going to develop,
full access.
they have it. And now you have access to streaming too.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Of course, you need
At
power.
home, you would
Yeah.
need power
and
and
you
all
need
that,
a
right?
box or an
Yeah.
antenna. But
You need to be able to afford the service, which in some regions is
yeah,
very
that's a limiting
expensive.
factor. Yeah. But again, that starts with a group. Kind of like people used to go to Starbucks for Wi-Fi or go to a coffee shop to get Wi-Fi because they didn't have it at home.
Yeah, for a long time.
Same here, Okay, so here's the internet in this one spot in the village somewhere.
That's what they were talking about. It'd be like,
Yeah.
the village internet.
Yeah, which is kind of cool. I mean, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's got enough speed and bandwidth to do stuff like that. So
You could see it making a kickstart in an area like that where people would download music in an internet-enabled region, and
that's true.
every so often go back to recharge to download
Oh,
more music or
Like
whatever.
a well.
Yeah,
Music well.
community music well.
Ooh, that sounds like a good name
yeah.
for something. A
But
music
it would be
well.
very curious to see how something like that would impact a society that was fresh to it.
You're somebody different now than you were before, right? So whatever
Maybe.
that is. Yeah. Anyway, we're really gone off as usual.
It's a little off.
We do this every time, and someone brought
Uh-huh.
that up. Yeah, you guys always go off on tangents.
That's like the whole thing.
Yeah,
though.
well, that's what we do.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you don't like it, you can stop a few minutes early before we get there.
Well, if they made it this far,
That's true.
presumably.
That's true.
You
Come to
can't
think of it, if
complain
you didn't
too
make it
much.
this far, don't complain.
That's right.
It's your own fault. On that note, we probably should get going. Thank you, everybody, for watching us. Don't forget to thumbs us up, like us. And and we were asking earlier about, give us comments on what got you started in this, because it's curious. Like, think back. It's some people, it might take a while if you've been doing this for a while, but what was the spark that got you going on higher end audio?
Yeah, we read these comments.
It'd be interesting for
Sometimes we
everybody.
use them for future videos.
It would be interesting. Take care, everyone.